Thank you everyone for coming today. See, Sonny, just out of interest, first off, I'd like hands up to anyone in this room that saw Sonny Morey play football. I said football, could have been with Gawler Central. That's where Sonny started at Gawler Central, but I think what we'll start off with first is a little bit about your early life. Tell us about where you were born, your time in Alice Springs and what happened.
Thanks. I was born at a cattle station about 200 odd k's north of Alice Springs called Yamba. Yamba is an anglicised word for Yarumba, which is honey ants. And that part of the country is pretty rich in honey ants. And that's, when it actually rains, that's when the ants, actually the little bodies fill out with honey. But that's Yarumba, that's Yamba. And unfortunately, the family used to bring us down to the old telegraph station. We knew it as there's a special name for it, but that's where we used to come down to Alice Springs. And unfortunately for me, that's where the welfare caught up with me, and I ended up with the system as they call the stolen generation. But that's just a short version of where I was born in Yamba, in NT, but I've spent 90% of my life here in South Australia, between Gawler and Williamstown nowadays.
So when you were first part of the stolen generation, you were still in Alice Springs. Tell us a little bit about St Mary's, and then when you came to Adelaide, where you were in Adelaide, and a little bit about that transition through there, that catching the plane and everything like that.
Thanks, Rob. That's not my reflection on those incidents is not pleasant. There's two things that stood out when I got picked up by the welfare system. Number one, I had no idea what everybody was saying because I didn't speak English. Our own language was my language. I had no understanding, no idea where I was going. Absolutely frightening. So when you think of a 7-year-old kid placed in that situation, you would think you would be terrified of what's going to happen. I thought they were going to take me and murder me or something like that. But lucky for me, I survived that system. But that was what it was. That's the way it was, and the welfare system didn't assist us any good. They just took us and placed us in the situation. They didn't tell our parents or tell my mother. She never knew. I never saw her again. So that's the sad part of the story.
And then tell us a little bit about the transport. You were in St Mary's for a few years, went to school there. Tell us a little bit about how undercover they took you from Alice Springs, and then you came to St Francis, and then a little bit of your experience at St Francis.
That was very interesting. I was with the other two little fellas, and I'll explain who they were in a minute, but basically what they did to us, we were the last 3 children, or boys out of the Northern Territory that were taken away under that system. And they actually drove us out and sort of covered us up with blankets, drove us out to the end of the airport and put us on a plane, and that's how we got to Adelaide to St Francis House. Now, does anybody know where St Francis House is? You all know where it is. It's called Captain Hart's building. It's on Semaphore South, near Bowra. That's where the Board of Missions actually ran and looked after the Aboriginal boys. And that place was some quite famous Aboriginal men, like Charlie Perkins and John Moriarty and those blokes. And I can explain, well, you know, if you knew history, you know what John Moriarty meant to us Indigenous people. Because John Moriarty, he runs a company nowadays, and you probably see a lot of his design on the Qantas aircraft, the dot paintings. That's John's company. But there are other people that grew out of there, the butlers. But there's only 60 boys that were taken from the territory that was placed there. A very interesting part. There's actually a grounded rock with all the names on at St Francis House, all the names of the Aboriginal boys that were staying there. And in 1958, 59, they closed the place down, kicked us all out. That was basically the argument between the board of the Anglican board and the government. Over 20 cents per child, apparently. So they just closed the place, kicked us out, and unlucky for me, I got fostered by people in Gawler. And that's where I started.
And just on the last picture you just showed, that was the ad that put in the paper to get them to go to homes in South Australia. And you ended up going to Gawler. Tell us a little bit about that experience. But before we do that, you played soccer when you were there at St Francis, and he got a medal for the best player as a soccer player. Or you decided on football?
Yeah, that was interesting. Basically, because the Port Adelaide football teams didn't have any junior footballers, and it was very difficult for them to actually recruit us because we were Indigenous kids. They didn't want to have nothing to do with that. So basically, we missed out. But the soccer team didn't. They wanted us to play. So there was, in the photograph I got, there was 3 or 4 of us that played in that side, and we went through undefeated. Didn't lose a game. And I couldn't figure out why. We were pretty quick in those days, I suppose, running away from school. But the interesting part of that is that in the photograph you got a bloke called Colin Butler who lives in Gawler nowadays, and his son Dylan is the club champion at Sandy Creek Golf Club, or the old Gawler Golf Club. And there's another bloke called Harold Thomas in that photograph, and I'm in the background. But Harold Thomas, everybody knows what he did, and his designs flies every day on the flags that you see, the Australian flag. And of course the other lad is called Peter Butcher. Now Peter's sister married a bloke who's a cocky down at Butte called Trevor Jones. Her name was Peggy, and Peggy's a grandmother of one bloke called Lachlan Jones that played for the Ferals. I mean Port Adelaide.
Now tell us about your experience coming to Gawler, how that sort of went, and how you got into to football with Gawler Central. Tell us a story about you were thinking about playing for South Gawler, but then you went to Gawler Central.
Yes, that's interesting because basically I was living in First Street, which is South Gawler. Down the road was a bloke called Bert Harkness. Bert was the president or secretary of the South Gawler Footy Club. So he said, why don't you go down, they have cultural junior training at Gawler Oval. So me and this other young fellow, we decided to come down and have a look. And we went up to this group on the eastern side. There's 2 teams. One training down the western part of the oval, the other on the eastern side of the oval. And as I was trying to get a kick with these blokes, this old, I call him old fellow, he's probably a young bloke, when he came over and said, mate, you're not going to get a game with us. Go down and train with that lot. But the strange thing was when I went down to these other guys, they were cheering and saying, thank you for coming down here, we don't like those other blokes. But that was the South Gawler footy team, they didn't want me to play for them, they sent me down to the team that I ended up playing for, Gawler Centrals.
And just out of interest, Robin Mulholland, who co-wrote the book Sonny with myself, he's got the opposite story. He's an Irishman, come over from Ireland, and he saw football there. He went to play for Gawler Central, and the priest said he's a Catholic, and he said, no, you've got to play for South Gawler. So, and the funny thing is, we're skipping a little bit ahead because we can't tell the whole story, but the last year before he went to Centrals in 64, in 63, he played in the grand final against South. You're on one wing, Robin was on the other. What was that like?
I can't remember this long ago. Look, interesting aspect of that was my last year with Gawler Centrals, and I didn't take much of the leprechaun, that's what we call him. He's probably got a million kicks like he always does, but the fact is what he do with the ball, I don't know. But no, Robin's a wonderful player with Central Districts, as you know, but he's also a very nice man. The best part about Robin is he's a good mate of mine, and even though he played for we call them the Catholics, I don't want to be rude to any religious people, but that's the South Gawler Footy Club, but that was a long time ago. I'll forgive him for playing for them.
Yeah, that was just the other week ago for Gavin, wasn't it? Tell us a little bit about how you got picked up by Central District Footy Club. I mean, they were introduced to the SNFL in 59 as a seconds team and juniors. And was there any overtures to you going to the club before they got into the league? And then when you were 18, you went out to Centrals in 64 when they first went into the league.
Well, the history of what they call the Central Districts Football Club starts basically with the 6 clubs. You've got the 3 Gawler clubs, and you've got the 3 clubs down in Salisbury North, Salisbury and Elizabeth. They're the 6 foundation clubs of Central Districts Football Club. They were going to call it actually the Gawler Football Club, and somebody said, no, it's not, we represent the Central District Wheatbill area, which is what they call this area. So they called it Central District, and our first the footy jumpers came from Footscray. Everybody knows that it's Western Bulldogs nowadays, but it was Footscray Footy Club. And we did play a trial game once against them, and didn't work out too well to the Footscray boys, but no, that was another story.
So tell us about playing league football. That first game, you got the first kick. It was easy, wasn't it? Tell us that.
No, it wasn't actually. It was a very terrifying moment because you're playing against an experienced team. West Torrens were one of the top sides in that era at that time. And to, I'm standing a bloke that's actually came from Gawler Centrals, and he ended up looking after him. We became very good friends. His name was Brian Livesey. Lovely player, and he played for Torrens, and he looked after me. Actually, he probably pushed me into getting the first kick. But Bronco was a very nice man, and his son Stephen ended up playing for Central, so it goes back a bit. But the way I was recruited was going back now to the late Peter Page. Peter was playing footy for Central Districts, mainly in the reserves competition, but he also came from Gawler. As you know, the Bushmans is owned by the Pages all those years ago. So Peter, he was the one that recruited me to go down to Central. So again.
So you were a wiry wingman back in those early years, and tell us a little bit about the '60s, playing under Ken Eustace and Jonesy and that. What was that like? And watching the players develop. They came through the late '60s into the early '70s when there was some success. Just tell us a little bit about that period.
Football in that era was totally... Well, the Sandford footy was very tough. It was one of the toughest competitions going around. They sort of marketed themselves like the AFL or the VFL in Melbourne. The game itself was tough, and if you think back nowadays, how many umpires you'd see today in today's modern football? There's so many umpires, probably more than the players actually. The interesting thing in that era, there was one central umpire, 2 boundary umpires and 2 goal umpires. And once the ball was left the area that you were playing in, all sorts of things happened to players. And apparently a lot of them had fainting spells, so I don't know. But can you imagine how rugged and tough it was? And that's the sort of players that you had to put up with. And you have to be pretty quick to get away because they'll dong you on the head.
Now, you were quite quick back in the '60s, but then you slowed up a bit and you reinvented yourself as a back pocket. And tell us about that transition. I think you won the best and fairest in 1970. Then you played in the reserves premiership in '71, but then '72 you were reinvented.
Thank you. No, thanks very much. Yeah, that's nice. We're probably getting a bit thirsty up here, but I thought Paul was looking after it. He's busy. Oh, look, when you talk about footy in different eras, it's not that easy to put in the context, because if you look at today's football, I don't like the AFL, the way they keep changing the rules. They've got that many umpires now, that's more than the players, but the fact is they keep changing the game. And I don't know why, but they're ruining it to me, but that's the way it is, and that's how I feel about it. But basically when I started, on the wing, I was pretty slippery in those days, playing for Gawler Centrals. Apparently nobody would catch me. I think the only bloke caught me was Alfie Skews, and Alfie's passed away now, so... but as you get older, you slow down. It's a fair season to play over nearly 14 seasons, and you've got to get slow somewhere. So the back line was an ideal place for me, because apparently that's where all the slow blokes go. So that's where I ended up in the back pocket. But the best part of playing that is because you can read the play like you do across the centre or anywhere across the forward line. And that's the key to it, especially in Elizabeth Oval. It's that big. You've got to get to the ball first, because if you don't, you'll be chasing people all day. It's too big.
So when you first went to the back pocket, in '72 you were runner-up to Malcolm Blight for the McGarry Medal. Then you made the state team for a couple of seasons. And then sort of Central's had that success. In '71, '72 they played finals, but then they just became middle of the road. And then the big game happened in 1976. In '75, Glenelg kicked 49 goals against Centrals. The next year, playing at Glenelg, it was your 200th game, and Centrals actually beat Glenelg. Tell us a little bit about that experience. You're the first Centrals player to play 200 games.
Well, let me talk about the game that the Bays kicked all the 1,000,000 goals that day. I can tell you where I was. I was sitting in the bloody Glenelg membership area, and this is not good. So I decided to leave halfway through the game. But basically what happened was they were just playing kids out of the underage in the senior side because we had so many injuries. And when you look at it now, I think we're in the same situation. We keep losing senior players at our footy club. I keep bringing up kids and the kids keep getting taken away by the Victorians. It's not, I don't think it makes any sense to me, but anyway, that's what happened. And the Bays completely gave us a hiding. So the year after, my 200th game, which is very important to the club, being the first 200 game player, we thought we'll turn the table around and give this mob of gentlemen down the bay a little bit of a lesson, so we did.
Now you retired within a year or two after that, but then you took up coaching. Tell us a little bit about that. It was first off, it was you'd done that. So tell me how you got that gig.
Yeah, that was interesting. Basically, I was approached by the Barossan clubs like Newry and Tanunda, and Udonna was this little odd team out. And I spoke to a lot of people, especially one of my mates, Fred's now passed away. And he was from Kapunda, and he said, I wouldn't go to that mob with Newry or Tanunda. He didn't like them. He's a Kapunda man. And he said, why don't you go to Udonna? I said, well, what sort of a challenge is it? He says, oh, they haven't won a game for a while. I said, thanks very much. So I said, okay. I said, I'll accept the challenge and we'll have a go. And funny thing, we won double premiership the first year. It was a bit of a shock to me, but not only that, the first training session really impressed me. I looked at the mob I was going to train, and I thought, God, what have I got myself into?
And then after that stint, you went back to Central District as a under-17 coach in the 80s, and they won a premiership under you. But a lot of the kids that you were coaching, like Roger Girdham and a few of these guys that went on to play league for Centrals, so you were sort of nurturing these future Centrals league players. How much joy did that give you?
Oh, it's great to, when you put in all that sort of work, it's not easy coaching kids, because especially that age group, around 15, 14, 15, 16, because they go off, and I think the female aspect of the other half sort of leads them astray a bit. Trying to get them back into playing footy and to listen to what you're telling them about the skills, and particularly about how to play, how to stand an opponent, to work out if they're left-footed or they're right-footed players, and just those little things that give them a bit of a guidance as they grow up. But no, it was really good because you can see where these boys were going, and some have gone on to become great footballers and great clubmen. So actually, I feel quite honoured that at least I've put something into the game and I've given something back to the club.
Now, just tell us a little bit about your working career. You started off here in Gawler, and some of the work you did, you worked for Tommy Zoik and Sports Power here, you worked in the police force. Just tell us a little bit about those, your working career, and a couple of anecdotes from working in the police.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got an apprenticeship with, I don't know, I think this is the age group, they remember, the Postmaster General's Department, or PMG. Because they split up that organisation to Telecom Australia and Australia Post. And because Telecom Australia's gone on to be Telstra, but there's another story. And I worked with them I did a fitting machining trade, 5 years at trade school, and I ended up working 30 years, ended up being a supervisor at Telecom all those years. But the interesting part was the people you work with, and you make great friends. But we do have a luncheon meeting every now and then. There's only about a dozen of us left, I think, out of that, about 40 or 50 people. So sadly, that's what happens, that we're all diminishing, but no longer, yeah. And what else did you want?
Tommy,
I worked for Tommy Zorich for a while. Then I got recruited by SAPOL. I don't know why they wanted me, but they said, look, we want you to work with us. So they set up a special unit dealing with Indigenous issues, and I worked with them for about 13, 14 years. So, but I'm still a patron of the academy. I go down to all the graduations and sit with all the commission officers. I know them all by first name. Even the commissioner himself comes up to me and says, "G'day, how you going?" So, oh, yeah, still alive. No, it's interesting times, but the policing part of it was good because I worked at APY Lands, and ended up, my last couple of years I worked for the Australian Crime Commission, so obviously I must have done something right after being taken away from my family. Very interesting times.
Tell us a story about the APY lands when that guy went across the border and you had to go across there.
But it reminded me of which guy that went across the border. They're all going across the border. Now, it was an interesting thing. They had a footy carnival at Ernabella, or it's called Ernabella, it's now called Pugaji. And young Gilbert McAdam was the umpire. He's the only umpire they had. There were about 20 games. They killed him. But the interesting thing, we were doing policing, making sure that there were no grog or drugs being brought into the community. And I stopped this vehicle right on dusk. It's very interesting. So I said, mate, you got a licence? And got the torch on him. And he looked really worried. I said, you okay, champ? And I looked at his licence, and I put the torch in the back. He had a station wagon. I reckon he had 20 blokes in this jammed together. They were the footy team going for the next season game. I just said, just go.
Tell us about Elizabeth North, the one-armed guy. You know,
No.
You don't want to tell that one?
No, I can, but I heard this one the other day.
One of my mates I worked with, he just retired from SAPOL after about 30 40 years. And he told this story. We went to a disturbance, and there was the patrol sergeant, old Butch Venning. Butch was there. Me and my mate, we were not really supposed to be doing this sort of work, but they were short. So we arrived, and there's this guy, he was causing all the trouble, mouthing off, and I said, mate, you need to just go on. And he wouldn't move, so I said to Butch, we're going to have to arrest him. So we went to drag him off. I ended up wrestling with him through this garden, these bushes about so big, we flattened that. And in the end, I'm on the bottom, this guy's on top of me, and Butch is on top of me, and Butch is about 30 stone. And my mate, he just ran up and kicked both of them off. He said, you're trying to kill the old bloke. But that was interesting. But anyway, we arrested this young fella, and he came and apologised to us for what he caused. But interesting times. That's just one aspect. I can tell you a few more, but I won't get into that.
Now we'll just move on to, while we were putting the book together about Sonny, we went up to Alice Springs. Tell us a little bit about some of the experiences up there, going to Yamba, meeting your cousin, going to find the sister Maggie there. Tell us a little bit about those experiences.
That was an interesting trip, both for Robin and Rob, because I don't think they've been over in that part of the world. But the interesting part was the first time that I took them up to Yamba, showed them around. We were at Snake Wells or Snake Creek, and I was actually looking at the old station that's no longer there, it's demolished virtually. And I spotted this person who pulled up, these two guys were the thing, she was chatting them up. She was one of the station owner's daughters. So I went over and said, look, they're with me. You know, they're not causing any hassles there. Then she must have realised who I was, but before she did, she just gave me a hug. But she's one of my relatives. She probably knew that. But the interesting thing was they were okay, they got away with it. I was just on the tip of my tongue to say, you can take them away and arrest them if you wanted. But I thought they were worthwhile taking. There was Yamba, and we went out to, where else did we go?
We went to the church.
That's right. Went there, and they told me the old deer that actually was commissioned by my mother to find me was still above ground. Apparently she was only a 20-year-old kid from France. She was like a nun, was it not? Somewhere in there. Europe? That'll do.
Europe,
yeah. Anyway, we met her. I think they were her and a friend are down here in some home in Adelaide now, but she said she thought I was the ghost. She had heard all about me but never saw me. I said, well, I'm the ghost, here I am. The interesting thing was she was just given the runaround by the authorities, by the church people. Not only was she working with, but the governments. Nobody would come forward with any information whatsoever, but that's why she called me the ghost. The interesting thing, I'm playing footy down here. Everybody knew I was.
Tell us a bit about what she told you about your mother. I mean, you thought your mother never even looked for you, and then she told you that she'd always sort of, that's your cousin up there, but the sister's coming up soon, and that's her there. That's the sister there on the screen at the moment. and she said to Sonny, Sonny, your mother never stopped looking for you. And have you ever seen someone cry when they're not crying? He was just full of emotion when she told you that, and it was just a real experience just to be there and experience it. Tell us a little bit about how you felt about that.
That's the interesting one, Rob, because how you feel is nothing you can do really. The emotions are different. You know, you can talk about it, but basically it's just one moment in time when you think that, you know, you would never ever love to do anything like that and find out that you were. But that goes to most of us really in a long way. We're all in the same boat. Because there are times that you think you're not wanted or you're not even respected or not even required in life. But the fact is that for years there I was, I never thought that my mother wanted to even know me. But that's different, as you know, and mothers know that's not the way life is it? There's always this opportunity or chance to try to catch up with your kids. But that was a sad time, but no, Carrie, I'm just happy that I've caught up with all these people to get the story right.
It's interesting sort of having a look at, so there's a lot of these photos that we're seeing at the moment is from that trip up to Gawler Springs, and it was Robin and I shared that week or two with you down there, and it was just a real experience. It was just heartfelt, and some of the information that you gave us. You took us out there to look at the Milky Way. I haven't seen the Milky Way since I was a kid, and it was really good. And then you showed us those cave paintings, you know, on the side, and you just knew so much about it. It's almost like you were home when you were there. That's the way you sort of like explain everything to Robin and I. It was almost like you were a tour guide for us. It was really fantastic you shared that. I think we captured it in the book.
Yes, it's one of those things. I suppose spiritually you're linked to the land and everything that's part of you. And just to go back and explain some of the places, you know, what some of the rock hard means, and just wanted to show the fellows that, you know, the territory's okay. It's dry, it's isolated, it's a long way away, but it's not. It's part of who we are as people, and that's the best part about going home. I feel comfortable going back because that's where I was born. That's my country, and it's everybody's country. All our countries actually. And we should enjoy Australia as we travel around and have a look at the place. I think it was a touching moment for me to go home with these boys because I need to explain a lot of things. Because when you play footy, let's say Robin is from Ireland, it's hard to explain what it means, the spirituality of the whole place and the process. But he took to it pretty well, even for a Catholic.
Now, what about last year when you were selected by the AFL to be like the ambassador for the Indigenous round? What did that mean to you? You got lots of publicity, didn't you?
It's a bit of a shock actually because I got the letter when I opened AFL, who the hell was. And the interesting aspect is that there's something that I never ever expected to, you know, in that context. It's the Doug Nicholls round, and what they do is there's only 6 of us in Australia that's been on it, and I can tell you they are. Great farmer, a great poly farmer. Bill Dempsey's the interesting story. Bill, I'll explain that in a minute. Sid Jackson, a bloke called Glenn James, AFL umpire, VFL umpire, and me. And I said, what happened to the other blokes, like, you know, the other Indigenous players? No, the criteria is quite strict. You had to do a certain aspect of your life in the sport, but never get in trouble with the police or anything like that. So obviously I must have been a good boy. So that's the way
I just didn't know what he did.
No, I didn't say anything. But it was interesting in the sense that I was sort of felt like I'm not a VFL player, any of these blokes, but neither is Bill Dempsey, because Bill played 300 odd games for West Perth. But the interesting with the story with Bill, his grandmother came out of a place called Laidlaw in the Northern Territory. Interesting story, and his mob, he was taken to Darwin and then to Perth. My grandfather came out of Laidlaw in the Northern Territory, and I ended up in South Australia. It's a very interesting story, and Bill played over 300 games for West Perth, the state footy. interesting times. And we're still good mates. I rang him over and talked to him. He said, we got a common interest. He said, we're the same people, mate. We come from the same country.
And just recently you were also inducted into the South Australian National Football League Hall of Fame and inaugural member of Central District's Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you now to get that recognition? You're 80 years old and you get this recognition now. How enjoyable is that for you?
A lot of free beers missing. No, it's absolute honour. I think it's not only for my family and for the Indigenous aspect of our footballers, but for everybody from Central Districts, because, you know, it's a great club. And for people that from the north end, Gawler Central is my old footy team. I reckon it's great that, you know, that one of their players are recognised for something which is part of the history of the football. They're a great game. And I feel honoured by that, and I think, I just hope that I represent everybody in a fair way.
And just one thing of interest, how many people in the room play golf or have played golf? How many have got a hole in one? How many have you got? One. Anyone else got a hole in one? No, I like to tell the story. I got two in one game, but it was putt-putt. But Sonny has had 3 holes in one. Tell us a little bit about that.
I shouldn't really. This is sort of bragging. No, look,
Photos up there somewhere.
the first one is, well, my mate reckons it's purely accidental. He reckon I hooked it, hit the tree, ricocheted, hit the back wall and went in. I said, oh, that's good. No, it wasn't. I just hit it and I thought, gee, that's disappeared somewhere. It's gone in the hole. But on the little par 3 at Sandy Creek, I've got 2 and one on the, used to be the 18th. There was a long par 3, the finishing hole, that was the 3. I've come close a couple more times. It's actually looped in and come out. I said, that's a bit dangerous. Now, look, very enjoyable part of golf. If you get a hole in one, you're in a special group. But you're supposed to win like a basket of golf balls, but I've never ever got any.
That's what you've got up there, the 3 trophies. It's on the screen right now.
Yeah, but that's just dust collectors, according to my missus.
And your missus would know quite a bit because she married you. Now we're just going to open it on the floor. Have we got any questions on the floor? I'm sure there's plenty of questions.
Is that book still available for sale?
No.
No. Oh, what a
It
pity.
sold out. It was a planned book, and we did market research, and we wanted to pre-sell the book to see how many we got. We had about 200, so we decided on 500. We got 540 made. It sold out in 3 days, but we got an agreement with Steve Marshall. Do you know Steve Marshall, the old Premier?
Yeah.
He gave us 15 grand to get it printed on the condition that all monies went to Aboriginal charity, which Robin and I agreed to. We made no money out of it, but what we thought we'd do is we'd sell the book cheaper for $35, and really should sell it for like $70 or $80, and so that, because the Elizabeth area tends to be a low economic type area, so we thought, you know, we're going to help Aboriginal people, we're going to help people that aren't really well off. So it sold out really quickly, and people have asked to do reprints, but the amount of work that goes into it, and, you know, Robin and I did everything for nothing, so it's better the way it is. We're thinking we might do an e-book down the track, maybe, but no, but a lot of libraries have it, I believe. Gawler Library.
The Cultural Heritage Centre has a copy. You can't borrow it, but you're welcome to come in and look at it.
Yeah.
At the Cultural Heritage Centre.
And I think there's an agreement with libraries in South Australia where you can order it and get it in from another library.
You can, absolutely. So if you go into Gawler Library and they can help you organise that and borrow it, and you can take it home for 2 weeks.
Because I think Robin and I gave 9 books to the Adelaide Library. We gave them 3 and then we gave them 6 for this other Premier's award type thing. So I know they're available. People have said that. That would be my recommendation, is to go to the library or go online and just order it into Gawler. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Good. Come on, where's all that?
I have a book here tonight. Will Sonny sign it for me?
No.
Bring it up.
I said no. Yeah, of course. This young fella here,
Who are the people behind there?
that's his grandsons.
They're the grandchildren.
Two of them, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Michael and Chris, the other one with the beard.
They play for Gawler Central?
No.
They live at Marion Bay. They're into fishing.
Oh,
Surfing.
And what's his middle name, the one on the right? Chris.
Sonny.
Sonny, yeah. And they're the grandsons, and then he's also got two great-grandsons.
Great-grandkids, yeah.
So, yeah, he's done well.
The boys have done well, not me.
This young fellow, Sean, you got a question?
Do I need a question?
Yeah.
I mean, I've asked Sonny some questions before, but I always find interesting, Sonny, like growing up well, not growing up, but being an Aboriginal man in the 60s, being famous for playing football, but the way it was at that time, there must have been some real contradictions going on for you and society. Like, is there stories you can play, things you can play? What was it like being, I mean, we've seen like videos of you when you played your joint game, and you were a loved man at Centrals and that area. But it must have been a tough time still being an Aboriginal man in the 60s.
You're spot on, Sean. It was one of those, looking at it politically and looking at the way the process was, prior to 1967, I was not even regarded as an Australian. So 1967 is when the referendum, 90% of people voted that Aboriginal people need to be part of the nation Australia. I mean, it's a bit ragged if you've been living here for thousands of years and you think you're nothing. But it was difficult times. Actually, you're spot on because it's socially, you know, you couldn't really interact with other people. But the best part is when you play in a footy team, you're part of one group of people, and all those footballers that I played with were fantastic people, and the coaches, because they made sure that you're okay. Even though I had to sit outside the pub and wait for the others to get drunk before I went home, because you were not allowed to drink, you were not allowed to even go in hotels or any of the services. So it was interesting times, but you get over it, and things have changed a lot. But the fact is, it didn't have any impact on me at all, because I never worry about those things. You work around them, over them and through them. But the fact is that you come out a better person for it. And I always look at it that aspect.
I imagine the racial vilification was maybe every game, and did it get to you a lot?
Not really. I looked at it and said, okay, if you want to say something, go for it. It's not going to make any difference to me. I'll just play better football. The interesting aspect of all that is that one thing did upset me, and I was called a pommy bastard, and I said, I'm not a pommy.
Hi Sonny, we've got an up-and-coming Central District's squad member over here. Have you got any advice for him?
Oh, jeepers. An up-and-coming Central District football
So
supporter.
just been accepted to play in the 2026 squad for Central Districts next year?
Well, under 15s?
Under 14s.
Under 40s?
Oh, that's good. I'm just encouraging, you know, and to have a go, because it's a way of getting into the big competition. You got to remember this one thing: you only get out of football or whatever the work you put in. So whatever you do not slack off. Put in the hard work, because it'll reward you. It'll become a better player. If a better player become, especially for my old footy team, but you get it up in the AFL. You don't know. The future is what you want to make, so go for it.
Sonny, when you were young and you came to South Australia, it would have been really hard to think, you know, it would have been easy to give up, you know, if things seemed too hard. But I guess is that because the person you are inside, you decided, I'm going to make something of my life. You know, like it would have been hard with challenges that you would have had in front of you, but you were able to overcome those challenges. And I think that you should be commended for having such a strong personality that you decided that, I mean, when you were taken away from your mother and your family, you could have easily taken the wrong road, but you didn't. You decided to make something of your life. Yes, I feel very proud of what you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Actually, the road travel is not that easy, is it? And it's difficult, but in life is what you do and what you make of it. If you know, I can see there's lots of people who fail themselves, and not only themselves, but the approach to life in the sense that it's not easy. The tougher it gets, the harder it gets, the tougher you should be, and you have to have a real mental capacity to handle it. And I think I'm fortunate enough, but I'd like to also say that I've had some great people who've been part of my life that helped me through it. And I just got to acknowledge them, because you can't do it on your own. There are other people that are part of it. And when you go look at Gawler Central, I've had some great mates that helped me through when I was a young kid playing footy. You know, and they ignored all the rubbish except for the Williston mob, basically.
Any Williston people here? Oh, sorry, you put your hand up.
When you first came over at 7, roughly 7, how long were you in that place in up near Semaphore? Were you put into a foster home and supported and helped along the way, or?
No, when I was about 7, I was taken to a place called St Mary's, run by the same organisation. And that's just out of Alice Springs, just a 7 k's out towards the airport. And I was from there until I was about 10 or 11. And then from there, we were the 3 boys. We were the last 3 kids that took out of Alice Springs and brought down. Then the government just cut the whole funding system off. So the churches could not fund us. That's why they closed St Francis House down. It's all over about 20 cents per kid. Because we only had about 12 or 13, boys there. But anyway, that's what happened. We were put out to be fostered by people. I was fortunate enough to be picked up by people in Gawler. And I just lived down First Street, not far from the Yankees actually. I used to kick the footy around with them. But we had a young girl with Jossie Allwood, and she used to kick the ball better than the rest of us. I don't know what happened to her.
Back in the 60s, SANFL was a long way away from becoming professional, which it is. How did you balance your work with your training requirements back then?
Yes, that was pretty difficult really, but the training aspect was, like we used to train 2 nights a week and Sundays, and we'd do lap work. Sundays was a punishment. If we, got in trouble, we'd have to. I can remember doing 20 laps at Elizabeth Oval. I don't want to do that again, that's a long way. But the payment wasn't much good. In fact, I could remember I was paid about $5 a game at Centrals, and we had to give back half of that to the club so they can survive. So it wasn't much money compared to the $1 billion today's blokes are getting paid. But I can't see how you can quantify one bloke and pay him $1 million and the other bloke should about 100 grand or something like that. I thought it was a team game. I thought everybody played to win as a team. So it's, to me, a bit divisive, isn't it? Yeah. So the bloke that's getting $1 billion, he should be doing all the work, shouldn't he?
Don't ignore me.
I did, I put it to them.
What do you think of the Barossa League, the footy nowadays?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I think I saw one game. I play golf on Saturdays, Paul, you know that. I haven't got time to go out to football matches. Look, I don't know what the progress in the Barossa is, because I haven't watched too many games, but the interesting aspect is they've got a magnificent oval at Lindott, worth about $40 million, something like that. But I think it'd be good for the kids, like the junior kids, like the young fellow down here, for them, for their future, because they can actually train on a decent ground and you can actually kick the ball. I can remember playing at Lindott Oval, because I was the youngest in the Gawler Central side. I had to stay on one wing, ankle deep in water, all the other mob. Oh, shocking, just like that, one end was full of water. But that's the way it is. But today, at least, the grounds are a little bit better, and I think it's better the ovals and better the players you can develop. You know, you develop all the skills, like the old stab passes and all that sort of stuff. Somebody can ask me a question: what the hell's a stab pass?
Rod Jenkins.
Ah, he'll know.
Yeah. Got a question?
No.
Sonny, who was the pick of your coaches at Central?
It wasn't Dennis Jones. I think Ken Eustace would have been, because he was really our first coach and a great footballer he was. And I really feel saddened by Ken because he's got severe case of dementia, and that's sad. And still looks like he can play footy, but he's in trouble. But he to me was probably the best coach. But the other blokes had, you know, that gone through and did what they had to do. Tony Castley was pretty good. I had good enjoyment of Tony, because he understood the way to play the game, and it's different as the Western Australian stuff, you know. But it was really good. But yeah, I say Ken or the other fellas, not too sure.
Were you still playing when the first match at Footy Park was on? Because Centrals were in the first match, weren't they?
Yeah.
They actually played in that against North Adelaide, and we won, didn't we?
Yeah. 5 goals.
Yeah. That was the first game. But I just feel saddened that we've given away a decent over that we had.
Yes.
And going back to help the cricket, that's what it is.
Because
They kicked us out initially. They said, we don't want you playing football on Adelaide Oval. I said, all right.
Just not getting off topic a little bit, but you mentioned Alfie Steers. I knew Alfie really well, played a lot of cricket with him. He's very competitive. I once heard that someone said to me he was the fastest thing on a football field. Would you rate him up there with that? You would say that he's one of the quickest.
Yes, I would. Alfie was one of what we call the slipperiest players you can ever stand. He's fairly quick, and he's also, I actually trained with him. We used to do like the store gifts and all that. In the summer I trained with Alfie in the sprinting exercise. He was a really good bloke. And he's a very quick player, and still South Adelaide won that premiership in '64. The only one they have, I think, for years. So Alfie was part of that team. But yeah, you know, it's interesting times. We've had like the blokes that I played footy with, the Rigney passing on, I played Colts football and A-grade with Mervyn, Gawler Centrals. And also Roger Rigney played for Sturt. I played against Roger, he was a good player. And he's just recently passed away, which is sad. But no, Alfie, one of the state's great sprinters, lovely man too.
Yeah, Alf played for South Adelaide in their last premiership in '64, and then also in '64 he won the Bay Sheffield.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Funny. So, you probably know that we played for Gawler Centrals back in the day. We actually won the under-16 premiership in '63. Where were you placed then? I always thought you might have been playing A-grade.
And under 18, you played juniors.
63.
I think I did play at Colts.
Yeah, he won the best and fairest in the juniors and the A-grade in the same year.
Right, yeah. But anyway, speaking of Willisonites, it was our side was coached by Tommy Ronan, who was kicked out of Williston and came to Centrals. And we played two grand finals in 2 years. But anyway, we had a reunion, a 60-year reunion of the '63 premiership, and I wasn't aware that we had a bloke played in the under-16s that year called Beefy Andrews.
Yeah, yes.
You played with Beefy?
Yeah. And Richard. Yeah. Richard Oates.
Yeah. So that's just it, memories. You know.
That's the interesting about the interesting thing about the best and fairest count. I was shocked to find out that I'd won. I was playing Colts footy and win the best and fairest, and then I went because I was playing 2 games on a Saturday, Colts and A grade, because I was short, and ended up winning the best and fairest in both grades. That was a shock also. The interesting aspect of all that is that years later, it happened again in Gawler Central. The local Darren Lehman won. So, interesting times.
Yeah, but Darren's a better cricketer than you. not a better golfer, but...
Would you be able to do that still now, playing both both games? Would you be able to do that now?
No, because he's not eligible, he's 80 now.
She means current teams.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, actually, to answer that question, you can't do that.
No, I think so.
Makes you either name for the juniors
Yeah.
or the seniors, and there's all these rules about playing 2 games on a Saturday. Yeah.
Thank you.
If any more questions? If not, we'll give Sonny a bit of a chance to have a breather and catch a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Thank you very much, Sonny and Robert, for putting this together this evening. It's been a magnificent experience to find out the history behind Sonny, which is brilliant. And on behalf of the Gawler history team, we'd like to give you a small token, a little gift basket of awesomeness that we put together.
What about Sonny?
That's for its own thing.